You wouldn't believe what happened in the dusty silence of my attic last autumn. Even now, months later, every time I pull down that squeaky ladder and climb up into the rafters, the memory washes over me, the smell of cedar, the dance of dust motes in the single beam of sunlight, and that peculiar suspended moment in time that shifted everything I thought I knew about myself. But before I dive into the details of that afternoon, I want to know, where are you tuning in from tonight? I absolutely love seeing the names of your cities and towns scroll by. Maybe you're in a high-rise in Chicago, a quiet farmhouse in Kentucky, or listening to the rain in Seattle. Wherever you are, I'm glad you're here. And if you enjoy stories about the quiet, unexpected turns life can take, please take a second to subscribe and hit that like button. It truly helps me share these little pieces of my heart with more of you. So, let me set the scene for you. It was a Tuesday in late October, the kind of day that feels heavy with gray clouds that refuse to break. My daughter had just left for her sophomore year of college, and the house felt cavernous. At 55, you start to feel the space around you differently. It doesn't just surround you, it leans in. The attic had been a source of anxiety for months. I knew there was a leak in the roof, a small, persistent drip that I could hear during heavy storms, a rhythmic tapping that kept me awake at night. I kept telling myself I'd hire someone, but life, or perhaps just procrastination, got in the way. Finally, I decided to go up there myself to assess the damage before calling a professional. I put on an old pair of jeans and a flannel shirt, tied my hair back in a messy bun, and climbed the ladder with a flashlight in hand. That's when I heard the doorbell ring. It was startling in the silence of the house. I climbed back down, annoyed at the interruption, and opened the front door to find Caleb standing there. Caleb was my daughter's childhood friend, a boy I had watched grow from a scabby-kneed toddler into a tall, broad-shouldered young man. He was 24 now, working as a carpenter while he finished his degree. "Hey, Mrs. Adler," he said, flashing a warm, easy grin. "Sorry to drop by unannounced. My mom said you mentioned a leak in the roof. I was in the neighborhood, finishing up a job, and thought I'd take a look if you wanted." I must have looked a sight, covered in cobwebs and dust, but his offer was so genuine, so devoid of judgment, that my embarrassment melted away. "Oh, Caleb, you have no idea. I was just up there trying to figure out where it's coming from, but it's a maze." He chuckled, stepping inside as I held the door open. Attics usually are. Lead the way. Following him up the ladder felt strange. He moved with a confidence and ease that I envied, his boots finding purchase on the rungs without hesitation. The attic was dim, lit only by the weak daylight filtering through the gable window and the beam of my flashlight. It smelled of old insulation and memories, boxes of holiday decorations, discarded toys, and clothes that were out of fashion 2 decades ago. We navigated through the clutter, Caleb ducking his head to avoid the low beams. He found the source of the leak almost immediately, a small patch of rot near the chimney flashing. "It's not too bad," he said, running a hand over the damp wood. "I can patch this up for you in an afternoon. You just need some new shingles and a bit of sealant." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "Thank you, Caleb. Honestly, I was dreading calling a roofer. I always feel like they're speaking a different language." He smiled, looking around the space. "It's a great attic, though. Lots of history up here." He walked over to a stack of old crates I had pushed into a corner years ago. Is this a record player?" I walked over, peering through the gloom. It was indeed my husband's old turntable, sitting atop a crate of vinyl records. "I haven't touched that since David passed," I said quietly. I didn't think I could bear the music without him. Caleb looked at me, his expression softening. "Music holds on to people, doesn't it?" "It does," I whispered. He reached out and gently lifted the lid of the turntable. To my surprise, it wasn't broken, just dusty. He plugged it into a nearby outlet, and after a moment of fiddling with the needle, the soft crackle of static filled the air, followed by the opening notes of a jazz album I hadn't heard in 10 years. The sound hit me like a physical wave. Memories of dancing in the kitchen, of Sunday mornings with coffee and newspapers, of a life that felt both vivid and vanished, came rushing back. I must have swayed, because Caleb reached out a steadying hand to my arm. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. "Yes," I managed to say, blinking back tears. It's been a long time." We stood there in the dusty half-light, listening to the saxophone weave its mournful, beautiful melody. Caleb didn't pull away, and I didn't move. There was something profound about sharing that moment with him, someone who knew my family, who knew my loss, but who was also separate from it, viewing it through the lens of a new generation. "You should bring this downstairs," he said softly. "Don't let the music stay hidden up here." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not just the boy I used to drive to soccer practice, but a man with a kind heart and an old soul. "Maybe I will," I said. We spent the next hour moving boxes, clearing space around the leak so he could work. We talked as we worked, about his classes, about my job at the library, about the strange, suspended feeling of the world lately. He listened intently, asking questions that showed he genuinely cared. It was refreshing. I hadn't had a conversation that felt this real, this present, in a very long time. When he finished the temporary patch, he wiped his hands on a rag and looked around. "You know, if you ever want to clear some of this out, I've got a truck. I could help you haul it to donation." "I might take you up on that," I said, smiling. "But for now, how about some iced tea?" We climbed down from the attic, leaving the ghosts behind in the rafters. Sitting at my kitchen table, drinking tea as the afternoon light turned golden, I felt a shift within me. It wasn't seismic, but it was significant. The house felt less empty. The silence felt less oppressive. When Caleb left, promising to return with the materials for the permanent fix, I stood in the doorway watching him go. I felt a sense of gratitude that surprised me. It wasn't just for the roof. It was for the reminder that life goes on, that connections can be forged in the most unlikely places, and that even in the dusty corners of our grief, music can still play. That evening, I went back up to the attic. I unplugged the turntable and carried it downstairs, along with the crate of records. I set it up in the living room, pouring myself a glass of wine. As the needle dropped and the music filled the room, I closed my eyes and let myself feel it all. The sadness, the joy, the memories. But underneath it all was a new feeling, hope. And it all started with a knock on the door on a gray Tuesday afternoon. The days that followed Caleb's visit had a different texture to them. It was as if someone had opened a window in a stuffy room, letting in a breeze that smelled of possibility. I found myself humming as I shelved books at the library, my mind drifting back to the conversation in the attic. It wasn't the repair work that lingered in my thoughts, but the ease of connection, the way he had looked at my dusty past with respect rather than judgment. True to his word, Caleb returned that Saturday morning. I heard his truck pull into the driveway just as I was finishing my coffee. He hopped out, wearing a tool belt and carrying a bundle of shingles over his shoulder, looking like he belonged there. "Morning, Mrs. Adler," he called out, shielding his eyes from the sun. "Ready to make that roof watertight?" "As I'll ever be," I laughed, opening the screen door. "And please, Caleb, call me Sarah. Mrs. Adler makes me feel like I should be grading your homework." He grinned, a boyish expression that made him look younger for a moment. "Deal, Sarah." We spent the morning working. He was on the roof, hammering and sealing, while I stayed below, handing him tools and clearing away the debris he tossed down. It was hard work, physical and demanding, but it felt good. There's a satisfaction in fixing something broken, in taking tangible steps to protect your home. Around noon, we took a break. I made sandwiches and we sat on the back porch steps, wiping sweat from our foreheads. The autumn air was crisp, but the sun was warm. "So," he said between bites, "did you play any records this week?" "I did," I admitted. "I played Kind of Blue 3 times. I cried the first time, danced the second, and just listened the third." He nodded thoughtfully. "That sounds like a good progression. Healing isn't straight line, is it?" "No," I said, surprised by his insight. "It's more like a spiral. You circle back to the same feelings, but hopefully from a slightly higher vantage point each time." He looked out at the backyard, where the leaves were turning brilliant shades of crimson and gold. "My mom, she had a hard time after my dad left. Not the same as losing someone I know, but grief is grief. She stopped gardening for 2 years. Just let the weeds take over. It took a neighbor coming over with a tray of seedlings to get her back out there. Sometimes we need permission to start again, I said softly. He turned to look at me, his eyes dark and serious. Exactly. Permission to care about something again. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching a pair of cardinals flit between the branches of the oak tree. Then he stood up, dusting off his jeans. Well, that roof isn't going to fix itself, but hey, I noticed something else up there. Your gutters are packed tight. Want me to clear those out while I'm at it? Oh, Caleb, you don't have to do that. That's a messy job. I'm already dirty, he shrugged. Besides, if I don't, that new roof won't matter much when the winter storms hit. I watched him climb the ladder again, marveling at his energy, his willingness to help. It wasn't just politeness, it was character. By late afternoon, the roof was fixed, the gutters were clean, and we were both exhausted. I insisted he stay for an early dinner, a pot roast I had slow-cooked all day. We ate at the dining table, the room filled with the savory smell of rosemary and thyme. This is amazing, he said, helping himself to seconds. I survive mostly on frozen pizza and protein bars. I laughed. The diet of champions. You need a home-cooked meal now and then. I do, he agreed. Thanks for this. It's nice to sit at a real table. We talked about his plans for the future. He wanted to start his own renovation business, specializing in restoring historic homes. He spoke with passion about craftsmanship, about preserving the soul of a building while making it livable for modern families. You have a gift, I told him. You see the potential in things. I try to, he said. Most people just see the cracks. After dinner, he helped me clear the table. As we stood at the sink washing dishes, a song came on the radio, an old Motown hit. Without thinking, I started swaying to the beat. Caleb noticed and chuckled. See, the music's coming back. I guess it is, I smiled. He dried his hands and turned to me. You know, Sarah, you should come see a house I'm working on in town. It's an old Victorian on Elm Street. The owners are letting me restore the original staircase. I think you'd appreciate the woodwork. I'd love that, I said, and I meant it. He left shortly after, the house settling back into quiet, but it wasn't the heavy silence of before. It was a peaceful quiet, a resting quiet. The following week, I met Caleb at the Victorian house. It was a beautiful, rambling structure, peeling paint and all. He showed me the staircase, running his hand along the banister he was stripping and restaining. His pride in his work was palpable. It's beautiful, Caleb, I said, tracing the intricate carving of a newel post. You're bringing it back to life. That's the goal, he said. Everything deserves a second chance to shine. We walked through the rest of the house, discussing paint colors and light fixtures. He asked my opinion on wallpaper for the dining room, and I found myself animatedly describing a pattern I had seen in a magazine. It felt wonderful to be creative, to have an opinion, to contribute to something building up rather than just maintaining the status quo. As we walked out to the porch, she hesitated. Hey, there's an art fair downtown this weekend. Local artists, food trucks, that sort of thing. I was thinking of going to look for some pieces for the staging. Would you want to come with me? I looked at him, surprised. It wasn't a date, he was 30 years my junior, but it was an invitation. A hand reached out across the generational divide. I haven't been to an art fair in years, I said. I'd love to go. That Sunday we wandered through the stalls of the art fair. The air smelled of kettle corn and autumn leaves. We laughed at some of the more avant-garde sculptures and marveled at the delicate watercolors. I bought a small ceramic bowl, blue like the summer sky, and Caleb bought a wrought iron hook for his workshop. People looked at us, sure. A middle-aged woman and a young man in his 20s laughing together. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't care what people thought. I was having fun. I was living. At one point, we stopped to listen to a street musician playing the cello. The deep, resonant notes floated on the wind, melancholic and sweet. I closed my eyes, letting the music wash over me. When I opened them, I found Caleb watching me with a gentle expression. You look happy, he said simply. I am, I realized. I really am. He smiled. Good, you deserve to be. That moment, standing on a crowded street corner with the cello playing and the autumn sun on my face, I realized that the attic leak had been a blessing in disguise. It had brought Caleb to my door, and with him, a reminder that life is not just about endurance. It's about connection, about beauty, about saying yes to the unexpected invitations. Months passed. Winter came and went, the new roof holding strong against the snow and ice. Caleb and I continued our friendship. He helped me repaint the guest room. I helped him organize his business invoices. We had coffee. We shared meals. We talked about everything and nothing. My daughter came home for spring break and was surprised to find Caleb in the kitchen, fixing a leaky faucet while I read the paper. Mom? She asked, raising an eyebrow. Caleb? Hey, kiddo, Caleb said easily. Your mom's keeping me employed. Later, she pulled me aside. What's going on with you two? Nothing, I said honestly, and everything. He's a friend, honey, a good friend. He helped me remember who I was before the grief took over. She looked at me, seeing the new light in my eyes, the way I carried myself with more lightness. Well, she said, hugging me, I'm glad you seem back. I am back, I whispered into her hair. Spring turned into summer. I started a garden again, digging my hands into the warm earth, planting tomatoes and zinnias. Caleb stopped by to help me build a trellis for the climbing roses. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the fireflies blink in the twilight, he turned to me. I'm moving my shop, he said, to a bigger space. I'm finally launching the renovation business full-time. Oh, Caleb, that's wonderful, I exclaimed. I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have done it without your encouragement, he said. You believed in me when I was just a kid with a tool belt. You were never just a kid, I said. You were always someone special. He looked down at his hands, then back at me. I'm going to be busy. Probably won't be able to stop by as much. A pang of sadness hit me, but I pushed it away. This was how it was supposed to be. He was launching his life, flying the nest in his own way. That's okay, I said, reaching out to pat his hand. I've got plenty to keep me busy. The garden, the library, the records. He smiled, squeezing my hand. You're going to be okay, aren't you, Sarah? I am, I said confidently. I'm more than okay. And I was. Even now, when I hear the wind rattle the attic window, I don't feel that old dread. I feel a warmth. I think of the dusty rafters, the jazz music, the smell of sawdust and coffee. I think of the young man who knocked on my door and helped me fix more than just a roof. Life is funny that way. We think we're the ones doing the repairing, fixing up our houses and our lives, but sometimes it's the unexpected helpers who come along and hand us the tools we didn't know we needed. They remind us that the foundation is still strong, that the walls can hold new memories, and that there is always, always music waiting to be played. So, to anyone out there feeling a little dusty, a little forgotten in the attic of their own life, listen for the knock. Open the door. You never know who might be standing there, ready to help you let the light back in. Thank you for listening to my story. It means a lot to share it with you. If you've ever had a surprise friendship change your life, tell me about it in the comments. I read every single one. And until next time, keep your heart open and don't forget to dance in the kitchen. Good night, everyone.